Hey folks, welcome to the Rimworld Coffee Talk. This time we'll be going over the second preview of Odyssey. Just like the last video, this is unscripted, so it might get a little bit rambly. First off, we've got a release date. Odyssey is landing on July 11th, plus it's the Steam summer sale right now, so if you are looking to buy some more DLC, or somehow you don't own the base game but you watch these videos anyway, 20% off is pretty much the biggest sale you are ever going to see on Rimworld. It's a good time to pick it up. Let's get started by saying how glad I am that in the last video I didn't make any bold, sweeping statements that ended up being proved wrong almost immediately by this preview post. This doesn't come across like an expansion that will give a quest to every colony you play and crash land a partially built grav ship on your tile. Well, I don't know why I expected anything different. This means if you own all of the DLC, your home tile is now going to be hosting a fleeing Imperial noble, it's the site of an ancient danger, just happens to have a wrecked mechanoid with a functional chip inside, and it's also the location of a void monolith. It's getting a little bit ridiculous with how busy your single tile is becoming now. So I'm really hoping that we get settings similar to how ambient horror for Anomaly works. It allows you to turn off the crashing grav ship engine, for example, because it's going to be especially out of place if you're trying to run a tech-locked game or if you're playing with something like Medieval Overhaul. Anyway, the crashing grav engine gives us the first look at a new material, Gravlite panels. I'm still not 100% sure if these are only used to build the floor or if grav ship walls also need to be made using them, as it does mention that a deck built from Gravlite panels is essential, but there's no reference to the specific type of ship walls, only that you'll need to build them airtight. So let's make another bold claim that can be proved wrong pretty soon. I'm really not sure with the wording of the early grav ship if you'll be able to enter orbit immediately, or if it's more of a fancy hovercraft to begin with, purely because it talks about travelling all over the planet and it separates space out into a different section, which then goes on to mention that you'll need to do more prep to keep your colonists safe. After all, the ship that you start with only houses an engine, thrusters, chem fuel tanks and a pilot console. But in terms of what we've been told in this preview, that means you're lacking all kinds of other things. There are grav ship extenders that allow you to expand on your ship's footprint, grav core power cells that will passively produce power, working like a vanometric. There are signal jammers that allow you to land on more dangerous orbital platforms by ignoring their defensive cannons, fuel optimizers to extend the life of your chem fuel, shield generators to protect you from pirate drop pod ambushes, and a sub-persona core for the pilot console to help avoid any navigational errors. That's all within the ship section, but included within the space section is the mention of oxygen pumps, airlocks, and vac suits. Now the problem with this theory, well, the screenshot for the new starting scenario has a tiny grav ship present, and it's very clearly just the bare minimum setup for a grav ship to be operational. But all of those starting colonists are wearing vac suits. So does that mean that whilst you could go into orbit with a starting grav ship that's built on a crash landed scenario, it's going to end pretty badly for your colonists if you haven't prepared first? Whereas the grav ship starting scenario can't support taking new life aboard the ship, but it will allow your starting colonists to remain conscious in the cold vacuum of space from the very beginning. Either way, I know what scenario I'm going to be picking when I'm covering DLC. I've jumped ahead quite a bit while talking about this, so let's go back and cover some more points around it. Firstly, it's going to be contentious again because this point always is. No, there's no mention of ship-to-ship or space combat. Yes, you can build turrets on your ship and there is an orbital platform shown with massive cannons, but they are functioning like any other turret currently available in the game. Only they're locked to a floating foundation, which means your defensive battery now comes with you when you leave the tile and land somewhere else. That could make it incredibly easy to rock up to a faction base, land on their doorstep and unload a salvo from a battery of rocket swarm launchers to instantly win the fight, provided you can land on a faction based tile anyway, and there isn't some kind of restriction around it. I'd imagine the functionality to do this is why faction based defense timers were changed in 1.6 from 4 days to just 10 hours. I previously mentioned in the comments on a video that drop pod raids crashing directly into your grav ship could be a thing that you would need to defend from in space. Now we have a direct mention in the grav ship shield generator section that it helps you survive from drop pod ambushes and absorbs incoming fire. But that doesn't necessarily point to your ship being attacked directly whilst it's floating in orbit. A drop pod ambush targeting your ship could also be something that happens when you arrive at a tile with the intention of exploring it. much in the same way that you might want your shields up to protect your colonists as they attempt to exit the ship and establish a defensive position. We can kind of work out by process of elimination what the parts in the screenshots are now, when compared to what's been established. The small nodes are the gravship extenders, which allow you to construct a larger ship, meaning you have to start small and slowly expand outwards after you find these parts scattered around the world. Which leads us into how you'll be getting these new parts to upgrade your ship with. You can explore insect mega hives, trap-filled ruins and space debris that's floating in low orbit. The inclusion of the insect mega hive screenshot is really cool to see. There's hive warps present. It also makes me think more and more that these gravlight panels are purely for the foundation layer of the ship and potentially some gravship structures, as every time we see a grav core it's normally beside a bunch of these panels, presumably to ensure that when you get a new core you have the materials to build out your foundation and expand its support infrastructure. What else can we expect from some of these notes then? The mention of human error whilst piloting makes me wonder what skills and stats the piloting is going to be impacted by. Intelligence makes the most sense, but it might potentially have sight and manipulation offsets too, a good way of showing that your pilot has heightened reflexes and is paying full attention at the helm. Given that this expansion is pushing full Nomad quite heavily though, I doubt that a piloting error is going to result in a hull breach that kills everyone on board instantly. But equally, there needs to be some stakes at play here. So how do you go about banging up a grav ship without outright destroying it, or it resulting in a trivial repair job that's fixed by a couple of colonists with a blowtorch in 2 minutes? That's something I'm interested to see. Passenger shuttles are definitely confirmed. We've seen them a lot in the teaser screenshots. They're likely to replace a lot of my use cases for transport pods, especially as you can build these on your grav ship for a secondary mode of transportation. This is the part that specifically mentions there are places that your grav ship cannot go. It's why I'm not 100% certain that landing on a faction base with a fully armed death ship is a viable strategy. You may simply be told that there isn't enough space at the landing site to fit a whole grav ship, and be forced to use a shuttle for those attacks instead. Onto the space and low orbit screen, and would you look at that? Just like I said from the very start, you can't fly to another planet. I know some people in the comments have been pretty adamant and weirdly aggressive that of course you can travel between planets, but this update gives us confirmation that nah, you're playing on your home world and the skies above it, so get used to generating a planet with 100% coverage to make it more visually accurate. The sites you'll be exploring in space consist of orbital wrecks, satellites, asteroids, orbital platforms and mech platforms, with ancient uplink sites being accessible on the planet's surface that can be used to discover more locations in space too. So you've got a reason to go back and forth from the planet's surface to unlock a new exploration site. These sites can then be passively uncovered if you build an orbital scanner, which I'm assuming is going to be a fairly late game or expensive piece of tech to ensure that you go through the designed progression method a few times before locations are just automatically unlocked for you. Now that we get to see these sites in pretty good detail, one small thing to note is the inclusion of the unique weaponry in a lot of these screenshots. I'm not sure if we'll get an update before release talking specifically about these, but you can see a melee colonist using a new horn, there's guns with different coloured stocks, barrels, magazines and frames, as well as what looks to be a chain shotgun without the stock. As cool as all of the grav ship stuff is, this is one of the things that I am most hyped about. I love the modular weapons mod, and whilst this isn't working in the same way at all, some visual and mechanical variety to the standard weapons is extremely needed in the core game. It's something I'm really hoping sees a bit of love in the modding community to expand upon the framework that it'll implement. Anyway, orbital wrecks seem to be the most straightforward platform to loot, complete with raiders and or mechanoid threats, as well as the opportunity to get your hands on structures, crates and what seems to be a locked transport pod, making me wonder if this DLC is going to include more unique joiners like Anomaly did with the creeps. I've seen a couple of threads on Reddit mentioning about the inclusion of a new xenotype with Odyssey called the Starjack, so perhaps these pods are how we'll get our hands on them. Then we have satellite stations, which are absolutely massive platforms, packing a lot of static defences by the look of it. You can see where the basic grav ship has landed on the right and dealt with some of the turrets, again showing no sign of needing an oxygen supply, although those colonists are wearing vac suits. The strange part with the satellite is the lack of things in the station itself. There appears to be one major building of note and a single crate. For the most part, the rest of it is trash or traps, but risking your colonists to fight past so many defences for that reward means it must be pretty valuable. There are multiple types of asteroids you can now visit. This is shown on the orbital layer screenshot too. There are plain rocks, ore-studded rocks, gold-studded rocks, and rocks with a question mark. As you'd expect, some of these asteroids are going to hold valuable materials for you to mine, but the rock itself is a new type of material called vaxstone, which can be used to make blocks as well as gravlite panels. So that's another checkmark against the teaser image for Odyssey as to why the character has mineral samples on his belt. Some asteroids may also be hollow, used to store treasure by previous visitors. Not only that, these asteroids may also host a new type of tree with Odyssey, the Archaean. This is capable of transforming barren soil into fertile, making it possible to grow crops outside of hydroponics. Presumably you still need to figure out an oxygen solution though, unless the atmosphere works differently on these asteroids. It should be noted that the asteroid base shown in the screenshot is marked as a tester screenshot. This is purely to show off what you can build on them. It's not something you're going to stumble across when exploring and suddenly have a fully functional base. There are a couple of interesting additions to the north side of that base though that I'm not 100% sure on the function of. Then we have orbital platforms. These are used by traders. However, they do not appreciate visitors, as is shown by their multiple 9x9 tile perimeter cannons, the most aggressive form of a no soliciting sign ever. Given that setting foot on these platforms is considered an act of aggression, they're likely to be one of the more late game sites to visit, given that it says you need a signal jammer to avoid the defences as well. If you don't fancy taking on a fully inhabited platform, there are abandoned versions available to explore too, presumably shown on the map by the light or dark version of the icon. The abandoned stations do still appear to have static defences however, so it won't be a walk in the park. Now the more interesting part about these stations is that certain inhabitants are fugitives, with other parties paying handsomely if you're willing to bring them in. So if you chill in deep space, a mask over your face, you can deliver the prize but still narrow your eyes because your time you don't like to waste. That just leaves the mechanoid platforms, boasting the most advanced tech and unique treasures for you to go and plunder. Understandably, this is going to be guarded by some of the hardest threats the base game can throw at you. This is what you'll likely need more advanced armour for, as whilst the vac suit can protect you from a lack of oxygen, I can't imagine they're going to offer a great deal of armour. That's what marine and cataphract gear is for, as it's mentioned that these suits are still capable of protecting you from O2 loss. I'm curious to see if wounds are going to lead to armour breaches in Odyssey. Given that a charge round punching into a colonist hard enough to remove a limb or create a large bleeding wound is assuming that the plates have been compromised by that projectile. So is it going to be absolutely fine to tend to a colonist in an area without oxygen? Or do you need to swiftly move them back into an airlock location while the bleeding wound is present to avoid them suffocating? It could be a little overkill or really hard to manage if every minor sharp wound someone suffers is pulling them out of a fight. But equally, it seems odd that someone could lose their entire leg and not immediately have their O2 supply vented into space. Either way, that's all we've got to go on so far with the new teaser. Next time, they're going to be talking about the animals that we can tame, train, and eat in Odyssey. So look forward to me enthusiastically talking about pets. As always, much love to the people who are supporting the channel, be it on Patreon, through the comments, through likes, whatever it is, you guys are helping me keep going. It's awesome. I'll be back again soon with the next note drops and we'll discuss what's going on there. As always guys, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. Take care.